This is Jonathan Agnew for Pro Boxing Fans, joined once again by former 2-weight world champion and brand ambassador for Haye Bet. Link in description, Mr. David Haye. David, do you enjoy the boxing on the weekend?
I loved it. It was, no, I wanted to get the answers. How does Atoma deal stepping up in class against a proven, tested entity? And I think he ticked that box in terms of the power, the speed, the timing, the cleanness. Wasn't scrappy, wasn't winging. It was all neat and tidy. It was like he was on the mitts. It's like he's hitting the mitts. Ding, 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 ding. And it just showed, rarely do you see Dillian Whyte in that type of trouble that quickly, and the time was just the real deal.
You said to me before that you were comparing it to your fight with Thompson, and you questioned whether he could deal with that sort of pressure, whether it was too early. But what did you learn about Moses in that fight?
I learned he's a lot better than I was when I was his age. Put it that way, he's so much further down the line. He's closer to me when I was a world champion than when I just turned pro. At 20 years old. Physically, he's got loads more to develop. He's going to get thicker. He's going to get faster. He's going to get more resilient. He's going to have more training camps, more sparring. Getting comfortable under the bright lights. There's so many positives for him moving forward, and he's at such a high level already. It feels like he might be too good for his own good, where he's got to the point where the only guy that can test him is the number one heavyweight on the planet, Usyk.
Tyson Fury said he'll wreck Usyk and all the other old men out of the division. What do you think of that?
I get it. Tyson Fury's been in there and sparred with him. Tyson Fury's tasted it, and for him to say that, how big his ego is. He's rarely someone. He'd like to say he's the only man good enough to beat him, and he won those last two fights. But if he's saying Atoma, he knows something. He's been there. He's sparred. He's been in the ring with Usyk, and he's been in the ring with Atoma. He's a great guy to ask, to be honest, because he's tasted leather from both. And if that's what he says, who are we to disbelieve him?
Well, if you were sort of managing Moses and Usyk wasn't next, in an ideal world, who would be like three fights you'd make for him?
It depends how good I believe Atoma was. If Atoma had showed me in sparring that he can go at a crazy pace, that he's had some really live rounds of sparring, 10, 12 rounds at a time against world class opposition, and he's held his form. He's been hit and he's been able to come through it. And if he's proven everything he needs to prove in training behind the scenes, then yeah, he goes for the main event. He goes for the big boy, Oleksandr Usyk, for the undisputed, the number one spot on the planet. If him and his team believe that he's ready, we the fans, as you said, we haven't seen he hasn't passed the chin check, he hasn't passed a heart check, but maybe he's too good for his chin and his heart to be tested. Maybe they'll never get tested. Maybe he'll just run for everybody. I don't know. But
It,
it's going to be fun.
what do you think Usyk would have been thinking watching that on Saturday?
He wouldn't have got any confidence from it. He wouldn't have watched that and thought, oh yeah, if I fight him, I'll do this. What can you look at that and think? There's nothing you can see. It was just a clean performance. There was no fat on that performance whatsoever. It was all just lean, clean, mean knockout stuff, and that's what we want. I've been waiting for this heavyweight to emerge. There's lots of guys who show great promise early at domestic level, take them out to world class, and they start struggling. Where the higher level of his opposition, the better the record and the better the experience of his opponents, the quicker he's knocked them out, and that goes the right way. It's hard to knock out a journeyman who's come to survive. That's difficult to look good against. You miss your punches, you're chasing him around the ring, but um, if if he fights somebody who truly has the desire, if he fights someone who's got the desire to come at him, I think it's just irrelevant. I think whatever anyone has out there, he's just that bit better from just the few minutes I've seen of him. I can normally see him find things in someone's armory that I'm like, that's a bit shit. He needs to do that. I'm watching. I'm like, I can't see anything he needs to do anymore. Does that make sense? And I don't get that. I can normally watch a fighter and just pick holes that he's not going to make it because of this, and this, and 9 times out of 10 it doesn't really happen. But with him, I'm like, whoa, it's the polar opposite. I'm actively looking for chinks. I'm looking at him to think, okay, what does he need to work on? What could an opponent bring to the table that's going to cause him problems? And I can't see anything.
Gareth A Davies, the journalist, said on Talksport after the fight he believes that Moses would beat Joshua in 3 rounds. Thoughts?
I think he'll beat most people. I think he'll beat most people. If he is what I think he is, it's gonna be easy work, everybody. So it's like, goddamn, okay, this is new. This is a new thing. I don't think I've not seen this yet with any heavyweight coming through. Not in my time.
And another fight you would have, I'm sure, enjoyed on the card, Hrgovic and Adelaide. Hrgovic, you sparred years ago.
Yeah.
What
I
do you think?
sparred David as well.
You sparred
David,
David.
who was an amateur. Yes, I know both the guys well. I think Hrgovic that was a typical Hrgovic performance. He didn't do anything new or anything we haven't seen before. It was at the pace we was all expecting. It was all about what Adelaide and how Adelaide would be able to deal with it, but he wasn't able to. I said before, I think he's carrying a bit too much timber. He's a bit too muscle bound, and he could trim off a few pounds of lean muscle and just be a lighter force. He'll have more punches per round. He'll have better legs. He wouldn't have to rest in the double guard, and I think it would allow him to win fights that he's currently losing. Because he has the ability. He showed he has the ability to beat Hrgovic. If he was able to put that onslaught he did in the 8th, in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, he'd have probably stopped Hrgovic. But he didn't have the confidence in his engine to let his hands go when he needed to, and he wasn't winning the rounds. It's one thing, not letting your hands go, but you're winning each round. But when you're losing each round consistently, clearly you don't wait until round 8 to have a go. You try and make something happen. Try and do something different. He was doing the same thing over and over again. And I think Adam gave him a riot act in the corner, and he managed to pull it out, which was nice to see. It's nice to know he's got it in there, as he was able to get the bare minimum. He entertained everybody. Everyone got their money's worth in that fight, and that was one of the rounds of the year so far in the heavyweight division. The drama of it all, everyone was on their feet. So even in loss, he still gets credibility.
And as for Dillian, he said, I believe, that he wants to continue. At least he posted on Instagram that he'll be back. Do you think there is a way back? I mean, there's so many fighters in the division.
I'd still love to see him and Derek Chisora have a 3rd fight. I think that makes sense. They're both past their prime, but you're not going to see a prime fight. You're going to see a guaranteed scrap. And whatever level they both are at the moment, obviously they're coming to the end of their career. Why not give the fans one for the road? Derek can have his 50th fight, and Dillian can have that 3rd massive payday. It'll be pay-per-view. It'll be a exciting spectacle just off the strength of the first 2 fights. Now that's like a great fight. I think that's a great 50th fight for Derek, and I think it's a great fight for Dillian to sort of come back in and prove he's better than being a 1-round blowout to a 20-year-old kid.
Would you favour Derek in that fight after Saturday?
Yeah, off his last form, after how he's been consistently winning. The Otto Wallen fight was great. He's he's on a nice string of victories, and he's got momentum behind him. And I think it's a great all British clash. You don't need belts, you don't need any of that shit. You just need the O2 Arena, and both of those guys. Who's not going to want to be there? Who's not going to want to feel that energy?
David, that's all from me. Appreciate your time again. As I said at the start, link for Haye Bet is in the description. That's who this interview's brought by. You did some work with them going forward and stuff?
Yes, I am. And you've seen a lot more of me.
Okay.
I'll come back out.
David, appreciate it. Thanks,
Catch you later on.